So let's bring in Courtney Brown, senior economic reporter for Axios. Yamiche Alcindor is back with us, of course, covering the president. Ned Price never left us. So, Ned, thank you for being here. Yamiche, your take on what we heard there, because the president had said earlier, yeah, there's a 50-50 chance that this is going to happen. That is a better percentage chance than he often gives any kind of negotiations when he's going in. So was this expected?
Well, the president said that while it was a 50-50 chance, that he did expect and was hopeful that this would be a deal that he could reach with the European Union. And also, as you said, the president of the European Commission, which is really basically the leader of the European Union, that she also came in saying, look, we're the world's two biggest economies when you take the block of European countries and the United States. So we really need to work something out. And the president, they're saying that he feels like he has a deal now that feels good for America. And she's also saying that she feels like she has a deal that's good in terms of rebalancing trade. She sort of noted that there was this trade surplus when it came to the European Union and that there was a trade deficit when it came to the United States. I think what's also interesting here is that the president at one point was complaining about cars and saying that there weren't enough American cars being sold in the European Union. They're now agreeing, according to what their announcement is, 15% automobile tariff. You already smartly ran through so many of the other things, but it seems like the European Union is going to be making some big investments in the United States. And overall, if we even back up and look at the big picture here, President Trump was under pressure to make trade deals. He said he had already reached something like 100, 200 trade deals, but we only saw about a handful of them. So this at least adds one more trade deal as that August 1st deadline continues to loom, with the president saying that's the deadline to reach trade deals across the board. Alex.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good point there, because August 1st is looming this Friday. In fact, before I get to the details with you, Courtney, I want to ask you, Ned, diplomatically speaking, what was accomplished here?
Well, Alex, I think we got a really good example of President Trump very blatantly and clearly misleading the American people and all viewers in front of our eyes. For the president to say about an hour ago that there was a 50-50% chance of a deal with the EU and 3 or 4 big issues remain, who knows, could go this way, could go that way. And for an hour later, for the president and his EU Commission counterpart to be sitting there announcing a trade deal, the deal was signed before President Trump went out the first time. This is a showman above all. He likes to create drama, to inject drama. Clearly, they wanted to do this on a Sunday to juice markets tomorrow. This is about optics and less about substance. But then I think substantively, clearly, let's wait and see the details as they are written on the paper. I think we all know not to put too much stock or to overly invest in what the words that come out of the president's mouth. But if what he's saying is true, the bottom line is that the American people are going to be paying a 15% tax on any imports from the world's second largest collective economy, and that's the European Union. That is not a good thing for American consumers. It's not a good thing for American businesses. Costs will be passed on to American consumers. We know that. Now, we'll have to wait and see what other concessions were actually spelled out, whether those other concessions may help to make up for what the American people will be paying. But this will be felt by the American people in the coming weeks and months.
Okay. Ned, thank you so much for sticking around for that. I understand you have to go, so we will release you, but it was very good to talk with you. As we bring in Courtney, Courtney, is this a good deal for Americans?
The Trump administration has pulled off what we called in a story earlier this week, this kind of incredible tariff psychological trick. 15% tariffs are acceptable now. I think if you would have told the American people, if you would have told financial markets that we were going to have a deal with Europe and Japan where tariffs on the goods from their nations coming into the U.S. would be tariffed at 15%, I think there would be a lot of freak out. But because higher tariffs have been promised over recent weeks, at one point he even threatened 50% tariffs on exports from the EU. 15% sounds like a really good deal. As far as the details are concerned, the investments that Europe has made, Japan made a similar agreement, apparently, to make a huge investment in the U.S. We'll have to see exactly what the details are. This administration has definitely been announced trade deal first, release details later.
So, but this 15%, again, it will put an additional cost for Americans on things they may want to purchase. Let me ask you how the $750 billion of an energy investment, the $600 billion more on top of what is already invested in the United States in certain factors from the EU, the purchasing of military equipment. How does that, if at all, trickle down to the bank accounts, the pocketbooks of Americans? How do they benefit from that?
I think we have to be careful because we don't really know, again, what shape this investment is going to take. But assuming that it does come to pass, I think that would be great for, U.S. manufacturers, good for the U.S. oil complex, to have this load of money invested and infused in the U.S. economy. It means companies can hire more workers, they can invest in new factories, things of that nature. But again, I want to be careful about speculating too much because we don't know what shape this investment is going to take. We don't know over what time period it will take. There were reports a few days ago about some disagreement on the U.S.-Japan side about a similar investment and what exactly they agreed to. So again, we're going to have to wait and see what exactly gets spelled out on paper here.
Let me ask you real quickly as well, Courtney. Wednesday, Jerome Powell, the Fed, are we going to see a lowering of interest rates? I mean, not like he hasn't been pressured to do so.
Right. The White House probably will not get what they've been asking for on Wednesday. Financial markets are expecting the Fed to keep rates on hold on Wednesday when they finish their two-day policy meeting. The big news is going to come in the press conference. We're going to see what Fed Chair Jerome Powell has to say about the prospect of a rate cut, if not this meeting, maybe later this year. The other interesting thing that Fed watchers and myself will be watching on Wednesday is how many members of the Fed board say, you know what, I did not agree with this decision. I wanted to cut rates at this meeting. We have at least 2 Fed governors who have come out and made the case for a rate cut on Wednesday. And do they support it so much to do a rare thing in the Fed world, which is to dissent against the decision? We should mention that 2 of those, the 2 governors that have come out and said that, they are Trump appointed governors. And so do they dissent on Wednesday? And if they do, it would be the first time in 30 years that 2 Fed governors have dissented against a Fed decision. So it should be a pretty interesting meeting on Wednesday.
Yeah, and I'm glad you make that point because oftentimes people think it's up to the federal chairman himself to make that decision on whether to do it. It is not. There is a board of governors that they all put their heads together and make that vote. We'll see if there's some dissent for the first time in 30 years. Courtney Brown, thank you so much. Yamiche Alcindor, thank you so much as well. And we'll